The galactic map ends at human space, and none ask the reason. HFY. HFY Sci-fi Story. The suns had barely risen over the dry plains of Echo Ridge, casting a soft golden light over the frontier world. Dust swirled in the air, kicked up by the wind, and the distant mountains stood as silent witnesses to the quiet life that humanity had built on the edge of known space. But in this remote outpost, Marshal Cade Hawk was about to face something that would shatter the peace he had grown so accustomed to. Cade had spent most of his life riding the winds of lawlessness and order, a cowboy turned marshal in a small town that had no real enemies, just a few troublemakers, drifters, and gamblers looking for a quick buck. Life here was simple: cattle rustlers, saloon brawls, and the occasional land dispute. Nothing ever seemed to change. That was, until one fateful morning when a ship, not unlike a falling star, crashed just outside of town. At first, Cade thought it was another piece of debris from the nearby space lanes, but when the message came in, a distress call from an unknown ship, he knew it was something more. The transmission had been weak, crackling with static, but one phrase stood out clearly: "We need help." "It's about the map. The map stops here." Those words echoed in Cade's mind as he saddled up his horse and made his way to the crash site. The day was growing hotter, and his worn boots kicked up the dirt as he rode across the plains. He wasn't sure what he was walking into, but something told him that this wasn't the usual bounty or fugitive business. When he arrived, he found the wreckage of an old alien vessel, battered and scorched from re-entry, its metal frame twisted and torn like paper. There were no signs of life at first, just the empty, silent hum of the world around him. But then he noticed something odd: a strange shimmering marking on the ship's hull, a series of symbols that Cade didn't recognize. He had seen many alien ships in his time, but this one was different. Cade dismounted and carefully approached the wreck. His hand hovered over his sidearm, unsure of what awaited him. The wind had begun to pick up, and the once calm morning felt like it was shifting, as if the whole world was holding its breath. He reached the open hatch and peered inside, squinting against the dust. At first, all he could see were the remains of the ship's control panel, sparking faintly, still somehow alive. But then he saw the bodies. 3 of them, 2 humans, and an alien, their skin a pale shade of blue with swirling patterns that glowed faintly in the low light. They were all dead, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Cade's stomach turned. The wreck was clearly no accident. This wasn't just some lost cargo vessel or rogue trader. Something had gone terribly wrong. A low groan came from the wreckage, and Cade snapped to attention, his hand going to his sidearm as a figure stirred in the shadows. A woman, covered in dust and grime, crawled toward the ship's open hatch. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her clothes were torn, but she was alive. "Help, please," she whispered, her voice hoarse, barely audible over the wind. The map, it's all wrong." Cade knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Easy there. You're safe now." "Who are you?" The woman's breath came in shallow gasps, and she seemed to struggle to speak. I'm a cartographer. I was part of the crew mapping new systems. But the map ends here. No one's ever asked why."
Cade frowned.
Everyone knew about the galactic map, the one that detailed all of known space and the boundaries of human civilization. But there had always been one thing about it that confused him. It ended abruptly at the edge of human territory. No one ever spoke about the space beyond it. No ships ventured into the unmarked regions. No one had ever asked why. It was just the way things were. "The map ends?" Cade asked, his curiosity piqued. "Why?" The woman shook her head weakly. "So close to finding out. But they didn't want us to know. They tried to stop us." "Who tried to stop you?" Cade pressed, but before she could answer, she fell unconscious in his arms. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had said. The map ended at human space. No one asked why, and yet here was this woman, a cartographer, a member of a team that had been investigating that very question. Her crew had been murdered, and she had barely escaped with her life. For years, Cade had wondered what lay beyond the edge of the map. The unexplored regions had always been a mystery, but he had never thought much about it. Until now. The idea that someone or something was keeping the truth hidden made his blood run cold. What if humanity wasn't the only species to know about this vast unknown? What if others had already ventured into that space and never returned? He gently laid the woman down on the ground and quickly searched the wreckage for any signs of life or further clues. His eyes fell on a small, battered datapad. It had survived the crash, its screen flickering but still functional. With shaky hands, Cade activated it, and a map of the galaxy appeared on the screen, but as his eyes scanned it, his heart skipped a beat. The map, it was incomplete. At the edge of human space, where the map should have continued into the unknown, there was a blank spot, a gap. It wasn't just that the map stopped. It looked as though it had been deliberately erased. Something was hidden there. Cade's mind raced. He had to find out what had happened. He had to know why the map ended where it did, and who was keeping the truth buried. Cade Hawk sat at the edge of the campfire, staring into the flames. The night air on Echo Ridge was cool, but his thoughts burned hotter than the fire before him. The woman, he hadn't even asked her name, was resting in his cabin, and Cade was left with more questions than answers. The datapad she had given him was a key to something bigger than he could have imagined. The blank spot on the map, the gaps in history, the whispers of something hidden at the edge of human space. What did it all mean? The next morning, Cade packed his gear, tied his horse to the post outside, and went inside to check on the woman. She was sitting up now, still weak, but she was awake and alert. "Feeling better?" Cade asked, his voice gruff but sincere. She nodded, though her expression was distant, like she was still lost in thoughts that weighed heavily on her. "My name is Arya," she said, her voice much stronger now. "Arya Kellen. I'm a cartographer, I suppose. Until last night, I never imagined I'd be caught up in this." Cade leaned against the doorframe. "You said something about the map, the one that ends at human space. What do you mean by that? Why does it stop there?" Arya sighed, rubbing her forehead as if the question pained her. "The map isn't just a tool for navigation. It's a record of all known space. It shows the boundaries, both human and alien. But that map, the one that everyone relies on, doesn't just stop at the edge of human territory. It was created that way. There are entire sectors, empty spaces, where no one has dared to venture. But there's one region, just beyond our borders, that no one talks about. A void, a place where all the charts end." Cade's brow furrowed. "And no one questions it?" "No," she said firmly. "No one asks. It's like it doesn't exist." "Why?" Arya hesitated, then looked him square in the eye. "Because it's dangerous. There's something out there, a history, a war, that the higher-ups don't want people to know about. And if you go looking for it, they'll do everything they can to stop you." Cade's pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" "What war?" "I don't know all the details," Arya admitted. "But I do know this. Humanity was once in a conflict that nearly wiped us out. It happened long before the Great Expansion. The Zathar, were an alien race, far older than any of the ones we know now. They discovered something on the edge of our space. A weapon. Something powerful enough to erase entire systems. But the humans, we fought back. We managed to stop them from using it, but at a cost. The weapon was hidden. The region beyond the map was sealed off. The truth was buried." Cade stood still, absorbing her words. "So the map wasn't just a tool to help people travel. It was a way of hiding something." "That's right," she said, a note of fear in her voice. "And those who know the truth, they've worked to keep it that way. It's why no one dares to go beyond the map. It's why everyone accepts that the edge of human space is the limit. They don't want anyone to stumble upon the truth." Cade paced around the cabin, rubbing his chin. The idea of a galaxy-spanning secret, hidden from the public eye, seemed too big to ignore. He had spent his life dealing with petty criminals and small-time hustlers, but this was different. It felt like the whole universe was about to open up, and he had no choice but to step into the unknown. "How do we get to the edge?" he asked. Arya's face tightened. "It's not going to be easy. The path to the Silent Void is heavily guarded. There are ships patrolling the area, making sure no one gets close. But I have a plan."
G stood up, still wobbly but determined.
"The ship I was on, the one that crashed here, it was part of a secret mission to map that region. We were hired by a private corporation with access to resources that most people don't know about. They knew the risk, but they also knew the reward. We weren't just mapping stars, we were hunting for answers, the truth about why the map ends where it does." Cade crossed his arms, taking in her words. "And what happened to your crew?" "We were ambushed," she replied, her voice dark. "They knew what we were doing. The Zathar, or whoever is behind this, they didn't want us to get too close. They attacked our ship before we could reach the edge. I barely escaped." Cade's mind was racing. This wasn't just some lost vessel. It was a target, and whoever had attacked Arya's ship had made it clear no one was allowed to ask questions about the Silent Void. We need to get to that region, Cade said, making a decision. I can't just let this go. Arya nodded, a look of cautious agreement crossing her face. We'll need supplies, a ship, and a crew. But the most dangerous part is what lies beyond the map. You won't just face alien threats. There are humans, forces within the government, factions that want to keep this secret safe. If they know we're going to the void, they'll try to stop us. Cade smiled grimly. Then we'll have to make sure they don't find out. The two of them set to work preparing for the journey ahead. Arya told Cade about a hidden shipyard on a nearby moon where ships capable of traveling to the uncharted regions could be found. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Cade gathered what supplies he could, including a few trusted allies he'd called on over the years. A mechanic named Torin, who had a knack for getting ships into the air, and Lyra, a former smuggler with connections to underground transportation routes. Within hours, the small crew had assembled, and Cade had made up his mind. He wasn't just going to ride out to the edge of human space, he was going to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As they set out, the weight of their mission hung over them like a storm cloud. There was no turning back now. The edge of the map was more than a physical boundary. It was the key to a secret that could change the course of human history, and Cade Hawk, Cowboy, and Marshall was about to ride straight into the heart of it. The journey into the silent void was just beginning, and the truth that lay beyond it was more dangerous than any outlaw or alien he had ever faced. The journey to the edge of human space was harder than Cade had anticipated. The shipyard on the moon of Kalara, hidden deep in a craggy asteroid field, had been their first stop. With Torn's skills as a mechanic and Lyra's network of contacts, they had managed to secure a small but capable ship, the Stellar Arrow. It wasn't much to look at, rough around the edges, patched up in some places, and the kind of ship that had seen better days, but it would do. They needed speed and reliability, not comfort. Now, with Arya at the helm and Cade at her side, they were well into the uncharted regions. The ship hummed steadily through the void, its engines pushing them farther than they had ever gone before. The stars around them were distant, cold points of light, and the silence of space seemed to stretch on forever. Is it always this quiet? Cade asked, breaking the long silence. Arya glanced at him, her face serious. When you're heading into the unknown, quiet is the least of your worries. The real danger is what you can't see. Cade nodded, understanding. He wasn't used to the calm of space. On Echo Ridge, it was never quiet. There was always the sound of wind or the distant clanging of tools in the shop. But out here it was different. The calm was unnerving, as if space itself was holding its breath. As the days passed, Arya shared more about the secrets of the silent void. She explained how the human race had once been engaged in a conflict that could have wiped out entire systems, a war so dangerous that it had caused humanity to retreat to the edge of the galaxy. The Zathar, an ancient alien empire, had discovered a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems, a weapon that could alter the fabric of space itself. They called it the eclipse, Arya said, her voice soft as she recalled the ancient stories. A weapon capable of erasing everything in its path. The Zathar tried to use it, but they were stopped by a coalition of humans and other races. The war was fierce. The cost was unimaginable. In the end, the humans had no choice but to seal the region off, locking away the weapon. But why? Cade asked, his brow furrowing. Why leave it hidden? Why not just destroy it? The weapon was too dangerous to destroy. And the region beyond the map, it's more than just a forgotten corner of space. There's something else there, something that no one dares talk about. Cade sat back in his chair, contemplating her words. He had never been one for history or ancient wars, but this felt different. The more he learned, the more he realized that the story of the Silent Void wasn't just about a lost weapon. It was about something much bigger, something that had been buried for centuries. As the Stellar Arrow approached the outskirts of the Silent Void, tension filled the air. They had crossed the edge of human space, and now they were in uncharted territory. Arya's hands moved quickly over the controls, eyes flicking back and forth between the ship's instruments and the dark expanse outside the viewport. Something's not right, she muttered, her voice low. Cade straightened, his instincts kicking in. What do you mean? The sensors are picking up strange readings. We're not alone out here. Cade gripped the armrests of his chair, his hand instinctively reaching for the holster on his side. How many? I don't know yet. But they're coming fast. Before Cade could respond, a loud blaring alarm filled the ship. The lights flickered and the Stellar Arrow shook as if it had been struck by something invisible. Arya cursed under her breath and slammed her fist down on the console. Enemy ships, she said, her voice tight with fear. "They've been tracking us." Cade didn't waste time thinking. "Get us out of here, Arya." "I'm trying," she snapped, her fingers flying over the controls. But the ship's engines didn't respond as quickly as she wanted. The enemy ships were closing in, their forms now visible in the distance, dark, angular vessels that seemed to blend into the shadows of space. "Hold on!" Arya shouted, and she pushed the throttle forward, sending the stellar arrow into a sharp dive. The ship veered through the void, twisting and turning as laser fire streaked past them, missing by inches. Cade's heart pounded in his chest. He had fought in skirmishes before, but this felt different. This wasn't a typical battle. It felt like someone was trying to make sure they never reached the truth. The ship rocked again as a blast hit their port side, sending sparks flying through the air. The lights flickered once more, and the hull groaned under the pressure. "We need to shake them off," Cade shouted. "Can you get us to the edge of the void?" "I'm trying," Arya yelled, her hands shaking as she worked to maneuver the ship. "But they're not giving up. These ships, they're not just random patrols. They're trying to stop us." Cade's mind raced. The enemy ships were too fast, too determined. Whoever was in control didn't want them getting any closer to the truth. This was more than a simple attack. It was a message. Suddenly, one of the enemy ships broke formation, pulling ahead. It was fast. Too fast. And then it launched a barrage of missiles directly at them. "Brace for impact," Arya shouted as she'd pulled the ship into a sharp roll to avoid the incoming fire. The stellar arrow spun out of control, careening through space, and Cade's stomach lurched as the ship fought against the enemy fire. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down, the laser blasts, the ship shaking, and the distant hum of the engines. He reached for the controls and steadied himself. "We're not going to make it," Arya said, her voice tinged with desperation. But Cade's eyes narrowed, and his jaw set with determination. "We're not giving up," he muttered. "We came this far. We're going to finish this." With one final twist of the throttle, Arya pushed the stellar arrow into a daring maneuver, diving straight toward the asteroid field ahead. The enemy ships pursued, but the tight corridors between the asteroids gave them no room to fire. The ship jolted once more, and Cade braced himself, feeling the sweat on his brow. They had to get through this. They had to get to the edge of the map. "We're almost there," Arya whispered. The asteroid field thinned out, and in the distance, Cade could make out the faint outline of a station. A dark, silent structure, hidden deep in the void. This was it. The heart of the mystery. The truth that had been hidden for so long. "We're going in," Cade said, his voice low but steady. And with that, they entered the silent void. The stellar arrow cut through the cold, silent space of the silent void, a dark, empty region at the edge of known space. Cade sat at the edge of his seat, his fingers tightening on the armrest. The asteroid field had become nothing more than distant shadows behind them, and ahead, a lone structure loomed, a station, as old as the void itself. Its dark surface seemed to absorb the surrounding light, like a bruise on the face of the universe. As they approached, the ship's systems beeped, warning of unknown energy readings. Arya's hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to get a clearer picture of what lay ahead. "There's something inside that station," Arya said, her voice tense. "But the readings are all off. It's like nothing I've ever seen." Cade glanced at her. "What do you mean, off?" "I can't get a lock on anything," she explained. "The station's power systems are inconsistent, fluctuating in ways that don't make sense." Cade's mind raced. Whatever was inside that station, it was something powerful enough to interfere with their technology. He knew they were close to something bigger than they had ever imagined. The truth about why the map ended here, about the history buried in the void, it was all coming to a head, and they were about to face whatever had been kept hidden for centuries. "We're going in," Cade said, his tone unwavering. Arya nodded, though her face was pale. She wasn't sure what they would find, but there was no turning back now. They needed to uncover the truth. The stellar arrow slid past the station's defensive fields and docked with a loud clang. The station, old and forgotten, loomed around them like a ghost from a time long past. Outside the ship, the silence was deafening, only broken by the sound of their breathing. There was something eerie about the stillness. It was as if the station itself had been waiting for them. "Stay close," Cade ordered as he grabbed his blaster and slid it into its holster. "We don't know what's waiting for us inside." Torin and Lyra followed Cade as Arya stayed at the ship's controls, ready to take off at a moment's notice. They moved carefully through the station's corridors, the metal floors creaking beneath their boots. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows on the walls. It felt like they were walking through a tomb, a place abandoned by all but the ghosts of the past. As they moved deeper into the station, they reached a central chamber. At the center of it all was a massive control console, its screen still flickering with strange symbols, some of which Cade didn't recognize. The air was heavy, and a low hum seemed to pulse from the walls, vibrating through the soles of their boots. Arya approached the console, her eyes scanning the data. "This is it," she said, her voice shaking. "This is where it all began. The eclipse weapon was hidden here." Cade's heart pounded in his chest. "What's going on? What's all this?" "The station was designed to protect the weapon," Arya explained. "When the war ended, humanity had to make sure the Zathar couldn't use it again, so they locked it away, hidden beyond the map. But not just that. The station was built to control the weapon's power. It's why no one ever dared to come here. No one could find it. The region beyond the map was a barrier, a line no one crossed." "Then why did they hide it?" Lyra asked. "Why keep a weapon like that locked away?" "Because it's more than just a weapon," Arya said, her voice growing distant as she looked at the console. "The eclipse, it's not just designed to destroy. It can warp space itself. Whoever controls it could reshape the universe." Cade's stomach churned. The implications were huge. Whoever controlled the eclipse could destroy entire civilizations or bend the laws of reality. The thought of something like that in the wrong hands was terrifying. "I never thought I'd be standing here," Arya whispered, her voice breaking. "The truth was right in front of me, and I couldn't see it. I didn't know what I was looking for until now." Suddenly the station's lights flickered again, brighter this time. The hum in the air grew louder. Cade tensed, his hand instinctively going to his blaster. He looked around at the others, signaling them to stay alert. "We're not alone," he said, his voice low. Before anyone could react, the station's doors slammed shut, locking them inside. A mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, robotic and cold. "Intruders detected. Authorization required. System lockdown in progress." Cade's heart skipped a beat. They were trapped. "What the hell?" Torin muttered, trying to pry open the door. But it was no use. The station had sealed them in. The lights flickered again, this time flashing a warning across the screens. "Weapon activation imminent. Please evacuate immediately." "Evacuate?" Cade growled, slamming his fist against the console. "We're not leaving without answers." Suddenly, the floor beneath them rumbled. Cade's eyes widened. Something was happening. The eclipse weapon? Was it activating? Arya's eyes locked onto the control panel, fear flashing across her face. "It's starting. The weapon's core is awakening. We have to stop it before it reaches full power." They rushed to the center of the chamber where a massive glowing orb pulsated with power. Cade's hand went to his holster, his fingers tightening around the handle of his blaster. Whatever this was, they were running out of time. "Is there a way to shut it down?" Lyra asked, her voice tight with fear. "I don't know," Arya replied, her hands flying across the console, desperately trying to deactivate the system. "But if we don't figure this out, we're all dead." Cade moved quickly, his instincts taking over as he scanned the chamber. The hum of the station grew louder, vibrating through his chest. He had faced down criminals, outlaws, and even pirates. But this was something different. This wasn't a fight against men. This was a battle against a power that could tear apart the fabric of the universe. "We have to stop it," Cade said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Suddenly, the station's lights flared one final time, and a loud, thunderous roar filled the chamber. The eclipse weapon was fully awake, its energy pouring into the core of the station. Without thinking, Cade rushed forward and slammed his fist onto a large red button next to the control panel. The room trembled, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, everything seemed to stop. Then the power cut out. The station's hum died away. The threat of the eclipse weapon, at least for now, was over. Panting heavily, Cade wiped the sweat from his brow. They had done it. They had stopped the weapon from activating. But at what cost? As the power slowly returned, Arya looked at him, her face pale. "It's over. We've stopped it. But we don't know if it's truly gone." Cade nodded, his eyes scanning the now silent station. "Time. That's all we have now. But we've made sure the truth won't stay hidden anymore. The map didn't end because we were too weak. It ended because they wanted to keep this from us." Arya took a deep breath. "Then let's make sure the truth doesn't die here." The stellar era was ready for them to leave. As they made their way back to the ship, Cade couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had secrets buried in its past, and the truth had a way of fighting back. And he, Cade Hawk, had just scratched the surface.